Welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. So here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have back Doreen Hills. Doreen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back.
All right. So Doreen is a founder, director at the Center for Trauma Healing and Attachment. Their mission is to provide cutting-edge treatment approaches in healing traumatic distress, and they're committed to finding ways to provide quality and affordable therapy and to be the pioneer in healing trauma in the Northeast region. Doreen has been a mental health provider for over 20 years and has worked in various mental health settings in New York, Philippines, and Colorado. Her background includes intense and immersed experiences working with poverty-stricken fishermen in the Philippines, orphans that were severely neglected and abandoned, as well as Muslims in Manila. These experiences gave her immense insight to trauma resiliency and healing. She's conducted and facilitated trainings, workshops, and presentations in Morgan County and neighboring Northeast counties in Colorado on topics such as attachment, trauma, and neuroscience. Doreen, welcome back.
Thank you.
So before we get going here, and for those listeners who maybe haven't listened to the previous times you were on the podcast, give us a brief overview of how you got into this field in the first place.
I think it's been ingrained in me growing up. I really have so much experience and exposure working with people that experience trauma in the Philippines, and I look at this more of a calling, and that's where I came about, and I think that's purpose. It's I'm meant to do this kind of work, and I love it. That's the thing. I think part of why I'm able to expand what I'm doing is because I love doing it. I love the direct care services. I love the direct client service. I know that I have to be wearing many hats as a executive director and founder, but I go back to the roots of, sitting with my clients, being on the floor with kids and doing activities and trauma processing. That's what I love the most.
So you said it's a calling. This you have experience witnessing trauma, being immersed in it from a very early age.
Yes. And I think if people listen to the previous podcasts, I've witnessed and, exposed to what I call it's not generation, the ancestral trauma. I've experienced and witnessed the fear during the martial law and also the EDSA revolution in 1986. So I've experienced that. We felt it as a nation, and I was very fortunate to have a good family that I considered them as a buffer. They're protective factors for me to continue and to build resiliency. But as a nation, Philippines is third world. And I don't and would never trust the government there. They're not for the people. And that's how I feel about it. And so I've experienced that ancestral trauma growing up.
One of the things that inspires me about you and talking to you is, you've taken this experience and, like you said, it's kind of blossomed as this calling, but it doesn't stop there for you. I mean, you founded this whole organization. You're so, it's like you have all this energy to I mean, it is, right? It's like this almost a need. You're on a mission.
Yes. And I think I am persistent. One of the trainers that did the training with me yesterday on Complex Trauma 101, he shared, I am persistent. And I think I am, because I do believe that it does not stop, okay, I'm settled here. No, I think as a human being, I think we are capable. We have the gift of actually expanding what gifts we have as an individual. It does not end, as just being a clinician. I wanted to do more because I do believe, again, looking at it in brain science, we are capable of doing more than what we are thinking we are at right now. Mm-hmm. No one can limit us. The only one that limits us is us. And so I still am, every time there's always something in my brain, just things that we can do to expand the trauma center, things that we can do to help the people we're serving, and also the staff, under my care.
So today you had mentioned you'd like to talk about kind of protecting therapists, and talk more about what does that mean? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever shared this with you and, the other previous podcasts, but for 4 years, I think between 4 to 5 years, and I ended my term during COVID. I served as the vice chair at it's called DORA, Department of Regulatory Agency. That's the licensure board for LPC in Colorado. I served as a vice chair there for 4 years. And it is I've learned so much. I've learned so much from that experience. The purpose of the board is to make sure that we hold, that all clinicians in Colorado follow the statutes. The mental health law, and also following the code of ethics of ACA. And, some of them has something to do with educating licensed clinicians, provisional clinicians on, what they need to do, the updates, the continuing ed. But the biggest piece that we've done there is, unfortunately, sanctioning, clinicians that violate the mental health statutes and the ethics. And that in itself is very draining for me, because here we have clinicians that, when they violate something, that can be marked in their license. And it's something that we don't want to see happening, but it happens.
So what are we talking about specifically? What kind of violations?
Oh, so when I was with DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agency, the three biggest things that we run into, first is the substandard level of care. And that means poor documentation, very poor documentation. Not knowing, let's say in divorce cases or child custody cases, not paying attention to who needs to sign and co-sign forms for children. People can get dinged there, and it can be, considered a substandard level of care. Not getting their continuing eds, poor boundaries. And then it goes into much deeper, which would be sexual relationship with their clients.
So aside from the sexual relationship with their client, how is this brought to your attention? For example, if someone is not assigning documents properly, or even if boundaries are broken, how would your agency learn about these issues?
So we get the complaints because DORA has a public website. We get complaints from, it can be another clinician, or an agency, or other agencies agencies referring to this clinician, let's say the ones that they're gonna complain about, and even parents and families. Sometimes it's from attorneys. And so it really, there's a website that would that focus on, if you have any complaints, let us know. And then it gets brought up to us during our meetings. And they are these are intense meetings to where the public could actually hear what's going on. The complaints
they're intense in what way? How so?
We bring, with the identity of the person, all the identities are highly confidential, but the cases, we bring up the cases. And sometimes, we put it on executive session, or we can actually let the person know or let the public know that this is what's going to happen. So there are, depending on how severe the cases are, it can go to executive meeting, or we can let the public know that this is the violation and this is this is the sanctions. And once you have the sanction in your license, it's difficult. I think the rate of insurance increase. When you have to notify NBCC, you have to notify insurance and commercial insurances, that you have these sanctions, and it can be really, really exhausting for clinicians.
Now, are there certain violations that some clinicians aren't even aware they're making or have made? I could imagine that. I mean, it's, again, sexual abuse, sexual relationship seems at the far end of the continuum, right? I mean, obviously a clinician knows they're not supposed to be doing that. But in terms of other violations, are there some instances where a clinician's like, I don't know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We run into cases like that, like clinicians like, I did not know that I violated this, or I did not know that there is a complaint against me. And that is why I think it is important to be aware of the mental health statutes for each state. Wherever you're practicing, you need to be well informed, of the statutes there, and also be fully aware of, ACA Code of Ethics. Because if you're not, you can you can put yourself in harm, and also your client. So to avoid those pitfalls, here's the thing: if someone is licensed, we fully believe that you are aware of the statutes, right, that you are aware of the Code of Ethics. That's why you passed the test. But it does not stop there, Guy. It doesn't stop there. You have to check your licensure boards and make sure that if there are any updates that's going on, if there are any rules that's added. I think it's important to be up to date to that, and also checking with American Counseling Association and the Code of Ethics.
Now, this discussion is interesting to me because we would think that people who go into this field, who want to be therapists or counselors, have the best interests, right, in heart. No one gets into this field because they want to do any harm or create any kind of infractions. But at the same time, with boundaries, that seems to be a very interesting issue. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because it could seem to me like you could make a boundary violation, but yet have the client's best interest in your mind. Well, they called me and I was, I wanted to give them most access to me. I wanted to help them. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do believe we have the best and the kindest and pure intention, and we run into appropriate, the boundary violation, which oftentimes, it is a substandard level of care. It's still a violation. Right. I think when we when there is an enmeshed, or we get so confused with what is our role as a clinician, like an example would be texting, right? And sometimes there are gray areas there. Okay, so what is the limit of the texting? Is the texting, only specific for, appointments or schedule? Or is this something that, your client texts you because, they wanted to know more, like, hey, I'm having trouble, those kinds of stuff. We have to be aware, like, okay, when you're texting, is it just specifically focusing on, just appointments?
Mm-hmm.
And you are still guarding their identity, or the texting is deeper than that. You're actually like doing texting or counseling through texting, which is in a way like that can be a HIPAA concern, right?
Mm.
So those things, they may feel or they may seem insignificant or small, but we've got to pay attention to that, because that again can be an appropriate, that can be a boundary, concern.
Well,
the other one, does it make sense?
Personal. It does, but I was thinking, like, is there a situation where people get more personal in the text?
That happen, the personal, and they get personal in text. And so, okay, when that happens to you, you got to pay attention. Okay, do we need to pull away? I need to, to put it on my informed consent that I will only use texting as appointments, not for any type of conversation. If we have to have conversation, let's meet in person, or teletherapy.
So you were on this board for, you said, 4 years.
Yes.
You learned a lot. What were some of your What were some of your take home issue? What are some of the things you learned from this experience?
I learned so much about self-care. I think those boundary issues happen when we get so conflicted or confused or enmeshed with our clients, when we start to experience burnout, when we start to have those vicarious trauma. That means, for me, you become more emotional, you become more reactive now, versus actually, okay, I am your helper, I'm not your fixer. So self-care is so important when it comes to, maintaining healthy boundary. And we do have, when I was with the board, we actually would recommend the clinicians to seek some type of training on vicarious trauma, or even receive therapy on their, for themselves. We do that. So self-care is definitely very important. Another piece I wanted to share with the listeners is receiving professional consultation. If your instinct is telling you, I don't know what to do, or I am confused, you need to have a capable and credible supervisor to help you through this. Very, very important.
So this is interesting. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that some of these violations result from lack of self-care.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Let me just pause here for a moment. I want to thank our sponsors. We're talking with Doreen Hills, founder director at the Center for Healing, Trauma, and Attachment. We'll be right back. Okay. So vicarious trauma. So people therapists are going through or experiencing vicarious trauma. They might not even realize it, and yet they start to make these infractions.
Yes. And I think when we don't realize it, right? Because again, our job, or we tell ourselves our focus is to take care of people, but we got to take care of ourselves. And when we are doing this on our own, we're not going to notice it. And I think this is why we need to access and utilize the power of consultation and supervision. You know what? I don't really care if you're licensed, if you already got your licensure, you still have, I've been doing this for over 20 years, Guy. I am receiving 2 supervision consultation with with 2 other providers, because I want to make sure that I am in check. I'm emotionally and mentally in check, and I'm making sound and wise decision when I'm working with the clients we serve. I have 2 supervisors. And I already got my license in New York and Colorado.
Right, right. So it seems like you're saying it can be very easy for clinicians to feel, I'm licensed, I'm knowledgeable, I've got experience, and yet forget the importance of having those other set of eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
We've got to have, and it doesn't have to be weekly. You can check in maybe once a month with your supervisor or consultant. The other piece of consultation or supervision is receiving legal consult. At the trauma center, and what I mean by that is at the trauma center, we actually have, and I think it's a very good investment for clinicians. I have a malpractice attorney that actually check with us. And if I have any questions regarding a case that may put us in hot water or at risk, we check with an attorney and make sure, can you check, our consents and make sure it's up to date? Can you check if this is following the mental health statute of the Colorado, the Colorado rule? So we check with that. So I do have, again, 2 consultants that's so important for clinician. One is someone who works for the mental health consultation, and also legal consultant. Super, super important.
What would such a case, when would you need a consultant, a legal consult?
A legal consult?
Yeah.
I would, just checking your documentations. Yearly, once a year, I connect with our legal consult, and I check with him. Hey, can you make sure that all our informed consents, our disclosure statements, all that stuff follows the Colorado rule? And then all the, let's say release of forms. And also if, sometimes the case of divorce or custody can be really, really sticky. And so prior to taking cases like that, it is important to have a legal consult. Very important to have a legal consult and make sure that, okay, do we only require one parent to sign the consent, or do we need to have 2 parents signing the consent?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's say about 35% of people that get that we have in the complaint section, in the complaint part of DORA, are people that are clinicians that did not get the right consents. So the other parent is upset that, okay, well, you're not including me in the therapy part of our,
So maybe that particular parent didn't get certain monies that were allotted to them, and they were like, wait a minute. So they have a reason to complain. Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
So we got to be very careful before you open a case. Find out who is, do you need to have 2 parents signing the consent for treatment for a child? And so those kinds of stuff to where you feel like you're, okay, legally, I'm feeling, I'm not comfortable. Don't wait, seek a malpractice attorney that focus on working with, mental health. clinicians.
Yeah. As a general rule, do you feel like a lot of clinicians don't really think about this stuff?
No, they don't.
They don't until it's too late, right? Until they
Until
need
it's
to.
too late. Until until you get something in the mail from, from the licensure or the licensure department, making complaints, or you have a complaint letter, and then boom, okay, what did I do? And you sleep, you lost sleep, and then it can also be very traumatic for clinicians. So don't wait.
Let's kind of bring this back. Again, we're speaking with Doreen Hills. She's the founder, director at the Center for Healing, Trauma, and Attachment. Now, as we talked about recently on our last couple of interviews, you guys offer trainings. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the trainings that you offer for other therapists and clinicians and so forth.
Yes. We've offered many, and I can still offer that, something related to self-care, vicarious trauma, burnout, and how to take care of yourselves. Sometimes we give that to our people, but to the people we serve, but we don't give it to us. And so we identify different strategies, and also, besides that type of training, we also provide complex trauma training, treatment strategies for, working with complex trauma individuals. And I think the more information you have as a clinician, the better you will develop sound treatment, treatment plans and treatment goals, which is part of ACA Code of Ethics. You have to be aware, you have to be fully knowledgeable and aware of, the right treatment, effective treatment strategies for your clients. Are you I'll give you an example. So let's say, you're working with a complex trauma individual and you have basic information about trauma. Are you operating beyond your scope of practice?
Mm-hmm.
Or you think that this person is, going to be helped by how much you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think continuing ed is very important for all of us. And sometimes we have cases to where we recommend, we recommend respondents to get more. You need to get continuing ed for this specific courses because you went above and beyond your scope of practice.
And are these courses that you're offering, these are in person, online, both, or what?
So yesterday, December 4th, we did the in-person. We also have online as well. It really depends on what the community needs, but we can offer online classes.
Okay. And just remind our listeners, how can they learn more about what you're doing? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so they can connect with us through our website. It's karainc.org. And if they have feedback or any questions, they can, there is that comment section there. And that's pretty much it. Okay.
And Kata Inc. that's CHTA Inc.org. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Doreen, so inspiring as always. I mean, you can feel, well, seriously, I mean, you can feel that this is what you do. This is a calling for you and you are on a mission. And it's inspiring. It's really inspiring.
Well, thank you. It's really, not only for the people we serve, but also if I can be of help to clinicians, because I know you and I both know that they come to this work to help others. And if I can share some of my experience and knowledge from the regulatory agency, I want them to be protected too.
Awesome. All right, Doreen, we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.